She said, "My ex is coming to our wedding as my plus one. You need to be mature about this." I replied, "I completely understand." Then I called the venue, swapped my name on the contract for her ex's name, and sent them both the final bill. When I texted her a photo of my passport at the airport with the caption, "Have a great wedding, you two can pay for it." My fiancée Jade sat me down last week with the kind of serious look usually reserved for announcing a national emergency or that the last of the good coffee is gone. "My ex, Damien, is coming to our wedding as my plus one," she announced, her voice filled with a noble gravity, as if she were bestowing some great honor upon me. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her wine. "You need to be mature about this." I looked at her, then at the ridiculously expensive wedding binder on the coffee table, the one filled with fabric swatches and pictures of doves. A normal man might have argued. A lesser man might have pleaded. A more dramatic man might have flipped the table. I, however, had been expecting something like this for months. Her campaign to redefine our relationship into a bizarre, boundary-free commune of feelings had been escalating. So I just nodded, a thoughtful, supportive expression firmly in place. "I completely understand," I replied, my voice a perfect imitation of a man who is both mature and deeply enlightened. She practically glowed with pride. This, in her mind, was the final test. I had evolved. I was no longer one of those brutish, possessive men. I was ready for a modern partnership. What she didn't realize was that I did, in fact, completely understand. I understood that our engagement was over. And I understood that she and Damien were about to enter into a modern partnership of their own, one that was going to be very, very expensive. The plus one wasn't just a guest. He was about to be the guest of honor. You see, Jade operates on a different level of reality from most people. In her world, things like history and consequences are minor inconveniences. Her ex Damien wasn't just an ex. He was, in her words, a foundational part of her journey. Damien, from what I could gather, was a man whose primary occupation was having a journey. He was a freelance poet, a part-time yoga instructor, and a full-time financial burden on everyone he met. He and Jade had dated for 3 years before me, a dramatic on-again, off-again saga that apparently forged an unbreakable spiritual bond, a bond that conveniently re-emerged whenever he needed his rent paid. For the first year of our relationship, Jade was perfect. She was supportive, loving, and seemed to share my traditional values. Damien was a ghost, a funny story she told about her wilder days. She never asked for money, she praised my work ethic, and she seemed to genuinely appreciate the stable life I provided. I wasn't a simp paying for a freeloader. I was a man in what I believed to be a balanced, loving relationship. The red flags were not just absent, they were non-existent. Then, the ring went on her finger, and the deposits for the wedding started clearing. It was like a switch flipped. Suddenly, our relationship needed to evolve. Damien started reappearing, first in texts, then for innocent coffee dates. When I raised an eyebrow, I was accused of having toxic insecurities. She wasn't cheating, she explained. She was honoring her past while building our future. It was a bold strategy, you have to admit. About 2 months ago, we had the first major incident. I came home from work to find Damien in our living room, strumming a ukulele and apparently teaching Jade how to channel her inner truth through song. My inner truth was telling me to throw his ukulele out the window. He was sitting cross-legged on my couch, shoes off, with a serene look on his face that made me want to check my wallet. When I expressed my discomfort, Jade arranged a formal sit-down meeting where she and Damien explained to me, as if I were a child, that my possessive energy was stifling her creative spirit. Damien actually used the phrase, "Your paradigm of ownership is problematic." I almost laughed. Instead, I just nodded and said I would work on being more open-minded. My open-mindedness involved going online the next day and ordering a few discreet, high-definition security cameras for the common areas of my own apartment. A few weeks after the ukulele summit, I noticed a charge on our joint credit card, the one we used for shared household expenses, for $500 to an art supply store. I don't paint. Jade's artistic expression was limited to choosing Instagram filters. When I asked her about it, she waved her hand dismissively. Oh, that was for Damien. He's starting a new Canvas series on the transient nature of urban existence, but he was having a cash flow issue. So now my salary was funding transient urban existence. I didn't argue. I just took a screenshot of the charge, paid the bill, and quietly removed her as an authorized user on the account, telling her the bank must have sent her a new card that got lost in the mail. I told her I'd sort it out, which I did, by never sorting it out. This latest demand, that her ex be her personal guest at our wedding, was the grand finale of her campaign. It was so absurd, so breathtakingly arrogant, that it circled all the way back around to being a gift. She wasn't just giving me an excuse to end things. She was giving me a golden, engraved invitation to orchestrate the most satisfying exit imaginable. The camera footage I had collected was good, showing Damien was at our apartment far more often than I knew, but it was all circumstantial. Her demand was the opening I needed for something much more definitive. The next morning, after she left for a celebratory girls' day to tell everyone how wonderfully mature I was, I got to work. My first stop was not the venue, but my lawyer's office. I sat down with a man named Arthur, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who looked like he'd seen it all. I laid out the situation. The wedding contracts were in my name, the apartment was mine, and I was about to be replaced by a ukulele-playing journey haver. Arthur listened patiently, a small smile playing on his lips. He reviewed the venue contract and confirmed my suspicions. The liability was ironclad. But he suggested a crucial addition to my plan. A simple letter won't be enough, he said. You need them to sign an official assumption of liability agreement. We'll draft one that transfers all financial responsibility, and we'll make it look like a standard, boring venue form, something they won't even bother to read. So that afternoon, I called Cynthia, the event coordinator at the winery. I gave her my grand speech about the selfless gift and the groom substitution. She was, as expected, baffled but intrigued. So you're paying for your fiancé to marry another man at the wedding you planned? She asked, her voice a perfect blend of professional courtesy and sheer disbelief. Cynthia, love is a river, not a reservoir, I said, improvising my own brand of nonsense. Sometimes you have to let it flow where it will. I'm just helping to clear the dam. I told her that, to make everything official and to protect the venue, I was having my lawyer send over a liability transfer form that the new couple would need to sign. I would, of course, include the $2,000 amendment fee upon receipt of the signed document. The promise of free money and zero liability was too good for her to pass up. She agreed to present the form to Jade and Damien as a standard procedural requirement. Next came the vendors, the caterer, the florist, the band, the photographer. I called each one, told them the same glorious story. I confirmed that all future communications and most importantly, all final invoices should be directed to the new primary contacts, Jade and Damien. One of them, the head of the string quartet, actually congratulated me on my profound emotional generosity. I almost felt bad, almost. Then came the guests. I spent an hour crafting a beautiful, heartfelt email. The subject line was, an exciting update regarding our wedding. I wrote about the beauty of modern love, about relationships that evolve in unexpected ways. I announced that in the spirit of true maturity, I had decided to step aside, and that the wedding would now be a celebration of the union between Jade and her soulmate, Damien. I wished them a lifetime of happiness. I ended the email with a cheerful sign-off. I will be enjoying our previously scheduled honeymoon in Bali as a solo trip to celebrate my own journey of personal growth. I hope you all will join me in raising a glass to the happy couple. Best, my name. I sent it to every single person on the guest list. The final piece of the puzzle was our apartment. I packed a suitcase for Bali, went to the office and had all of Jade's mail forwarded to her parents' address, and then I called a locksmith. I also packed up every little one of Damien's possessions that had mysteriously migrated into my home. The ukulele, the yoga home, the ukulele, the yoga mat, the half-finished canvases depicting urban transients. I boxed them up neatly and left them outside the apartment door with a note, forgot these. It was time for my journey of personal growth to begin. I spent the next 2 days in a hotel, watching the chaos unfold from a safe distance. My phone started blowing up almost immediately. First, it was friends, confused by the email. Is this a joke? One asked. I replied with a simple, nope, just mature. Then came Jade's friends with more pointed questions. I ignored them. The main event, of course, was Jade herself. Her first text was just a string of question marks. Then came a, "Did you send that email?" I didn't reply. Then the phone calls started. I let them all go to voicemail. The real fun began on the day before the wedding. Cynthia from the venue called Jade and Damien in for a final logistics meeting. As they were leaving, she handed them the standard form. "We just need your signatures on this to finalize the change of groom on the event order," she said with a professional smile. In their arrogant, triumphant haze, they signed the legally binding assumption of liability without a second thought. They probably thought they were just signing a new seating chart. The moment Cynthia emailed me a copy of that signed document, the trap was sprung. The vendor calls started that afternoon. I can only imagine the conversation. "Hi Jade, this is Dave from Elegant Eats Catering. Just calling to confirm the final payment of $32,000 is on its way." I pictured her, sitting with Damien, the two of them looking at each other in sheer panic. Damien, a man who probably considered a successful month to be one where his debit card wasn't declined, was now legally on the hook for a six-figure wedding. That evening, I was sitting in the airport lounge, waiting for my flight to Bali when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered, a sense of deep satisfaction washing over me. "Hello." A man's voice stammered. It was Damien. "What did you do?" He whispered, his voice cracking. "The venue just sent us a bill for everything. We signed some form. Cynthia said it was just for the event order." "Ah, the form," I said, taking a sip of my pre-flight cocktail. "You should always read the fine print, Damien. It's part of the journey. That form was a legally binding contract. You and Jade are now the proud owners of a very expensive party. Congratulations. But I don't have this kind of money." He squealed. "Jade said you were handling everything." "Well, I was," I said cheerfully. "But then I evolved. I became mature. This is my wedding gift to you both. Don't say I never gave you anything." I could hear Jade screaming in the background, a beautiful symphony of consequences. "Listen, I've got a plane to catch," I said. "You two have a wonderful wedding." I hung up. I took a picture of my passport and my boarding pass, artfully arranged next to my cocktail. I sent it to Jade with a simple caption: "Have a great wedding. You two can pay for it." Then I blocked her number, blocked Damien's number, and blocked her parents, who had just started calling. I turned my phone to airplane mode and settled in for the long flight. I heard about the wedding from my best man, Mark, who went to the venue out of a sense of morbid curiosity. He said it was a disaster of historic proportions. Jade and Damien had apparently tried to salvage it. They'd had a massive screaming fight with Cynthia in the lobby of the winery, waving the contract in her face. Cynthia, now legally protected, just calmly pointed to their signatures. Jade's parents had shown up, and her father had actually tried to write a check, but it was for a fraction of the amount owed. The vendors, having been alerted that the new clients were refusing to pay, all packed up and left. The band, the florist, the caterer, all gone. About 30 guests had shown up, confused by the conflicting emails. They were treated to the sight of Jade, in her wedding dress, sobbing in the parking lot while Damien argued with her father about money. Mark said Damien actually tried to get the guests to chip in. It did not go well. Most of the guests just turned around and left. A few stayed, presumably for the entertainment. There was no food, no music, no flowers. It was, by all accounts, the saddest and most pathetic wedding anyone had ever seen. Jade's modern partnership had devolved into a public financial dispute in under 24 hours. I spent 2 weeks in Bali. I went hiking, learned to surf, and drank a lot of excellent, inexpensive beer. I didn't think about Jade once. When I got back, my apartment was quiet and peaceful. There was a stack of angry letters from Jade's lawyer, which my own lawyer, Arthur, reviewed and then used as the basis for a very firm cease and desist letter. Her case, he informed me with a chuckle, was frivolous to the point of being comical. She had no claim to my property, and the wedding contracts, thanks to a notarized signature, were now her and Damien's problem. I heard through a friend that Jade and Damien had broken up, a predictable end to their epic romance. The venue and the vendors were, according to my source, pursuing them both legally for the outstanding balance. Her parents were apparently refusing to speak to her after she cost them a small fortune in non-refundable deposits and public humiliation. She had to move back home, a 30-something woman living in her childhood bedroom, with a mountain of debt and a reputation as the runaway bride who got stuck with the bill. Damien, I heard, had left the state to embark on a new journey, one that presumably involved avoiding collection agencies. I poured myself a whiskey and enjoyed the silence.